Massive pork-filled abomination, choice words indeed from Elon Musk on the House bill carrying the Trump economic agenda. House Budget Committee Chairman Jody Arrington will join me momentarily with his reaction. New Jersey has an unpopular Democratic governor and voted decidedly more Republican in 2024. Democratic Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill will tell us what's wrong and why she should be the next governor. First came Liberation Day. Tomorrow, deadline day. The White House says U.S. trade partners have one more day to pony up offers on tariffs and market access. Inflation may hang in the balance. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout here mid-studio because we got to get to our guests right away. House Republicans keep warning their Senate GOP counterparts, don't tinker with the economic bill they passed with one vote to spare. But the Senate is doing just that. Where will that leave the Trump economic agenda? Well, I need to get over here because House Budget Committee Chairman Jody Arrington is here in the conversation corner. Mr. Chairman, great to see you.
Good to see you, Major.
Let's sit down, and I want to let everyone know, ladies and gentlemen, the chairman is the first person to fully embrace the Takeout golden tie rack. The green tie over there on the left on the lower rung used to be around Jody Arrington's neck. He can take it, he can take it back, but you're in the spirit of the thing. I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. You said buy one, get two free.
You can take as many as you want. I want to ask you about something you've heard and seen this afternoon. I want to read it all to you because I think the audience needs to hear it. From Elon Musk on X. I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This could almost be an opera. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it. It will massively increase the already gigantic budget deficit to $2.5 trillion, three exclamation points, and burden American citizens with crushingly unsustainable debt. Ouch.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Well, I wonder if he felt that way, just weeks ago when he was still working at the Doge.
Makes one wonder.
Because there were plenty of opportunities to express his personal convictions, which I believe are sincere, by the way. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate the yeoman's work that he did to expose the pervasive waste in the people's government. So. And I think he's proven just how difficult it is to root out that waste here in Washington and the resistance you get. But let's be clear. The amount of waste that he found, and I think he would have found more, but to date was about $200 billion. In our budget reconciliation bill, we identified and actually committed to reducing almost $1.69 trillion, which is about...
years.
Well, it's 8 times the amount that he identified. Again, I'm for reducing spending where it's unnecessary, inefficient, wasteful, fraudulent, anywhere, anytime, but we need to keep that, I think, in perspective.
Is he wrong with that criticism I just...
I think he's absolutely wrong in the fact that our budget, our reconciliation budget, is a balanced bill that offsets the cost of both defense, border, and the tax cuts. And here's the mistake that he's making that I think a lot of people in Washington make, whether it's intentional or not. They're not including the growth that would occur if you have pro-growth policies. Good tax policy, energy policy, work incentives, deregulation. We're not basing our growth assumption, which is very conservative, on CBO scores or right or left outside groups. We're saying under President Biden, if you controlled for COVID, the annual average growth rate was 2.7. Right. Under Trump, it was 2.8. The historical average over 50 is 3. Right. We said we believe we will grow at least 2.6% annual average over the budget window. That would bring in about $2.5 trillion. And then the $1.69 trillion on top of that offsets and then begins to bend the curve on reducing deficit. And the best metric of all for our nation's fiscal health, debt to GDP, it brings it down by 10 percentage points. That's why I think he's wrong about it.
Does this post on X from Elon Musk change the political dynamic in the Republican House Conference or the Senate Republican Conference?
I think it will.
Move any votes?
I think it will. I mean, he's
in what direction? Does it imperil the bill?
I think it could give a false sense of being able to cut more spending and find more healthcare welfare reforms beyond the 1.7. There's still meat on the bone, Major, even for just rooting out waste and improper payments and non-benefit efficiencies in, for example, Medicaid. There's still opportunities to improve it with respect to fiscal reforms. Quite frankly, there are ways to make it the pro-growth piece more pro-growth. Mm-hmm. But I think if you go too far and you don't just tinker or modify and you do substantive material changes, you can start stacking in a way that breaks the balance that we struck, the political and policy balance with the smallest majority in 100 years.
Right. So it could imperil passage of this bill.
Oh, I think that's just I think that is that's a given because Elon has so much credibility. His voice, I think, will carry in both the Senate and House conference.
Immigration was a hugely important issue in 2024. Rand Paul on Face the Nation brought up some criticism about the way the bill deals with the border wall. I want you to listen and evaluate.
When you look just at the border wall, they have $46.5 billion for the border wall. Well, their current estimate from the CBP is $6.5 million per mile. So if you did 1,000 miles, that's $6.5 billion. But they have $46 billion. So they've inflated the cost of the wall 8-fold.
True?
Not according to the numbers we worked with, but look, if in any way there's less spending.
Because when Elon says pork-filled, he might be referring to cost overruns like that?
I don't think so. I don't know what he's referring to about pork. I think there are estimates, and there are good faith estimates that might be different. But if we can agree that it would require less for securing the border, whether that's physical barriers, technology, more boots on the ground. I mean, there's a whole list of things that are needed to provide the necessary security, keep Americans safer, and enforce the laws with respect to detention and deportation. Oh, yeah, for sure. No, listen, that we will be working closely with the Senate, and if that's the case, let's bring that number down.
Rand Paul again, because he seems to be attracting a fair amount of attention just now, was on CNBC this morning, and he talked about raising the debt ceiling, which is in the legislation. Mm-hmm. Listen.
You have to say no unless they will change the bill. And that's what I've said from the beginning. I'm open to voting for the bill. I'm open to compromise on the bill. I'm just not open to supporting $5 trillion. This will, in debt ceiling increase.
Should debt and ceiling increase be taken out of the bill if that's what's necessary to get it across the finish line?
I don't think it should be. We have an obligation to pay our debts. Mm-hmm. I've said that before, and to protect the good faith and credit of the United States. Big deal. Mm-hmm. Very big deal.
Very big deal.
Okay. And when we negotiated for lower spending and other fiscal reforms with President Biden and Chuck Schumer, that was the Fiscal Responsibility Act. We did that in our annual appropriations process. We got 2 years of reduced spending. I think CBO scored at about $1.5 trillion in savings over the 10-year budget window. Well, that was a good small step, but certainly something new for Washington. We need to continue to do that. I oppose raising the debt ceiling with no fiscal reforms at all, just a blank check. But we have obligations. We've already incurred the debt. And as long as we do this, raise the debt ceiling alongside of spending constraints and fiscal reforms, hey, that we more than accomplish that in the budget reconciliation bill, and in far greater measure than we did in the Fiscal Responsibility Act with President Biden. Of course, that was a bipartisan process.
Sure. Before I let you go, on tariffs, we've had this conversation before. The president has yet to put together any deal besides the United Kingdom. Everyone's supposed to get their offer in by tomorrow. People keep pointing out the potential of inflation. The Federal Reserve keeps holding back on rate cuts because of that. How nervous are you, politically or economically, about tariffs and inflation in the next 6 to 8, 10 months?
I think when we pass the supply side, I just got back from the Reagan Economic Forum, so I'm using big words like supply side. I think once we reduce the tax and regulatory burden, you're going to open up the supply side vis-a-vis demand, and that imbalance that created inflation and a cost of living crisis will settle down. I think you start bringing inflation down. We're already seeing that on core inflation ticking down. So I'm not as concerned. I'm more concerned about what happens if we don't reset with the rest of the world and level the playing field for our manufacturers and farmers like I represent in West Texas. This has persisted for decades under Republican and Democrat leadership. I liken it to the budget deficit, which is going to take tremendous political courage. But if we don't deal with it sooner rather than later, I think it upends the economy. I think it weakens our country's security. And I think it jeopardizes my kids' future. So I think the president,
You're all in.
I'm all in to support him. We need the reset. And by the way, the first term, if passed as prologue, he was able to reset with 5 of our biggest trading partners, which represented 50% of our export markets, and our activity on terms of trade went up 25%. And it helped with all the other measures of success economically, including job creation and
Mr.
wages.
Chairman, yes or no, will the Trump economic bill be on his desk by July 4th?
I believe it will.
Thank you. Please come back. Look
Thank
forward
you.
to it. And
Good
thanks
to be
for
with you.
leaving your necktie. I appreciate that. Congressman Jody Arrington. Mr. Chairman, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Major.
Tonight, Kamala Harris ran 400,000 votes, give or take, behind Joe Biden in New Jersey in 2024. Energized Republicans see this year's governor's race as a blue state MAGA test case. Democratic Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill joins us to discuss her candidacy for governor. Iowa Republican Senator Joni Ernst has now drawn a Democratic challenger. The catalyst? Ernst telling a recent town hall when discussing proposed Medicaid cuts, quote, "We're all going to die." Ernst has offered a qualified apology.
I'm very compassionate, and you need to listen to the entire conversation.
And we'll ask a Biden biographer about the former president's legislative record. Remember when Biden aides were comparing it to FDR and LBJ? Where's that legacy now? We'll discuss that and more on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. We have an update on that flamethrower attack in Boulder, Colorado, Sunday. The administration says it has taken 6 family members of the indicted suspect into ICE custody. According to the Department of Homeland Security, Mohammed Soleiman's wife and children were detained and will be processed under expedited removal. That allows the government to deport migrants who are here illegally without a court hearing. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says they are investigating what family members might have known about the attack. FBI agents also searched the family's Colorado Springs home Monday. An Emerson poll in early May showed our next guest, New Jersey Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, with a double-digit lead over 5 Democratic rivals seeking the nomination for governor. That's the good news. And yet, critics, and some of them are Democrats, contend Sherrill is running a safe, establishment race based on biography with an agenda not indistinguishable from Governor Phil Murphy. We begin our conversation with Congressman Sherrill right there. Congresswoman, it's great to have you with us. Is that what you're doing, running a biography-based campaign that's very similar in agenda and emphasis with the sitting governor of New Jersey?
No, I think I've laid out a very different vision for the state, not just in how I would attack rising home prices and utility costs and some issues with our education system and healthcare system, but also how I would take on the federal government, the attacks on our rights and freedoms, but also the attacks on our economy here in New Jersey.
It has been said, and first of all, I want to ask you, you had a chance to listen to my conversation with the House Budget Committee Chairman Jody Arrington. Any reaction to what Elon Musk put on the X platform today or Chairman Arrington's defense of the bill now in the Senate?
So I was I sort of surprised and not surprised by Musk's tweet, given the chaos of this administration and his own chaotic tenure as he's doged the federal government. And so here he comes in, he really destroys so many of the things that help here in New Jersey, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, air traffic control, NIH, FDA, all the ways in which we bring drugs to market and take care of people. And then says, you know, he doesn't like how any of this went. Well, nobody does. Nobody here in New Jersey is really enjoying it either. So I have to say one of the reasons I'm running for governor is because Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican, has said he's going to doge New Jersey. He said he's not going to stand against Trump in any way. He is actually going to not take any executive order on whatsoever, which is pretty shocking that you would see that abdication of leadership. But also, when I was listening to Jody Arrington, he looked like he was in a tight place there, because I think he understands that these tariffs have not led to what Trump has suggested they would. In fact, he suggested they'd be helpful to farmers. Well, farmers right now have been some of the leaders in the outcry against this administration, how badly it's harming them.
I want to ask you about Elon Musk. This political action committee associated with SpaceX donated to your campaign. One of your rivals in the Democratic primary said you should give that money back. You did. Do you have any problems accepting money now or in the future from any Elon Musk associated company? And related to that, do you still believe he should be investigated, that is Elon Musk, for potential conflicts of interest while he was a special government employee?
So as you mentioned, yes, I've turned that over. I've never taken money from Elon Musk, and I won't be taking money from his companies. But I do think it's really important that he continue to get investigated. He has tried to decimate any oversight into wrongdoing by his companies. He's on the hook for quite a bit of money if some of these investigations prove what they've suggested they will prove, with labor violations, et cetera. But also, I've proposed legislation that he and anybody else who holds a position of trust like he had get drug tested, for example. And now the reports of his drug use, which was far more concerning than even we understood at the time. Here's somebody who had weighed in issues of the Pentagon and other national security spaces. And we really need to make sure that we can't have these positions of trust that don't go through any type of investigatory background check in a normal way. If people have this kind of power, they need to make sure that they have the same controls like drug testing as others do.
Another one of your Democratic opponents has alleged that you and your husband made millions in stock trades, and that you have said in an interview that you self-reported and paid a fine for one of those transactions. What are the safeguards you're putting in going forward, and what do you want to tell New Jerseyans about the wealth you've accumulated while in Congress?
You know, that was based on a false Newsmax report, a group that has been taken to court and is paying $40 million in court settlement fees because of false reporting. And I've never had a transaction where I enriched myself based on my congressional job. In fact, the transaction which you're talking about is where we automatically sell off any stocks when my husband's paid in stocks, because I don't keep any personal individual stocks, nor does he, because I never want anyone to think that I'm somehow profiting off my time in Congress. There have been reports here about how I've always gone above and beyond the ethical requirements. I continue to do so. And I've really promoted this idea that other members of Congress should also follow that lead and make sure that they are not holding individual stocks as well.
If you win the primary, you are likely to face Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican. President Trump called into a tele-rally last night. I want to play some sound from that.
Jersey's ready to pop out of that blue horror show and really get in there and vote for somebody that's going to make things happen. You'll decide whether New Jersey is a high-tax, high-crime sanctuary state, if you can believe it. A sanctuary state. Nobody wants sanctuary states, including Democrats, actually.
Your reaction? Is that what New Jersey is?
No. Well, we do have to take on the taxes here, and I've done that for years, and we'll continue to do that with our property taxes especially. But I would suggest that part of what we're facing here and the problems with rising prices are stemming in large part from the Trump administration and the chaos that he has generated. So, for example, I've spoken to people in the tourism industry who are really worried because we have a large part of our economy is based on tourism down the shore, and Canadians have said they're not going to come to Wildwood this summer because of Trump's rhetoric. We see small business owners who are saying they're seeing prices in the supply chain go up over 140%, and they are about to get shut down. Again, we're hearing builders saying they can't build because HVAC prices may go up 30 to 40%, so they put everything on hold. Again and again and again, we're seeing rising costs because of what Trump is doing. And if you recall, his number one promise to America was that he was going to drive costs down. And I think the only person that feels that they are in a better spot because of Trump's administration is Trump himself and his billionaire friends.
Coming to us from Bloomfield, New Jersey, that is her campaign office. You can see the signs behind her. Mikey Sherrill, Congresswoman, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Get it done by the 4th of July. President Trump pushes a self-imposed deadline for Congress to pass his economic bill. More on that next here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Here is a look at what else we, and now you, are watching this evening. U.S. Navy ships honoring civil rights icons could soon be renamed. Military documents obtained by CBS News show the Navy is considering renaming vessels, including the USNS Harvey Milk, named after the assassinated gay rights leader and a Navy veteran. The documents did not say what the ship's new names would be, but the proposal comes during Pride Month. Other ships on this evolving list are named after Thurgood Marshall, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Harriet Tubman, and others. The Trump administration is planning to move Greenland from U.S. European Command to U.S. Northern Command. You might say, well, so what? It matters symbolically and might even matter strategically. Moving Greenland under U.S. Northern Command suggests the military views Greenland more as a part of the United States defense than Europe's. Recall that Greenland is an autonomous Danish territory, has repeatedly said it has no interest in becoming part of the United States, territory or otherwise. This despite President Trump's persistent rhetoric in that direction. And an update on a story we told you about last night. Attorneys for MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, you see him there, say they will not present any evidence in his defamation trial proving their assertion that the 2020 election was somehow stolen. An executive for Dominion Voting Systems filed suit over Lindell's claims about the integrity of that very election. During opening statements, Lindell's attorney said, quote, "It's just words. All Mike Lindell did was talk." Indeed. I want to bring in our reporters to the family table. Two are here. Weijia Jiang for the first time. Robert Costa coming back. And forgive me if I have to turn my back to you to Nicole Killian. Nicole Killian on Capitol Hill. Nicole, I want to start with you. Again, don't be upset about my back. I got to look over here. About this story about the Navy, the ship names, and this consideration of sort of erasing something that was celebrated for a while as uplifting for national recognition, these longstanding civil rights and other types of heroes in that space.
Yeah, that's right. Well, CBS News has learned that the U.S. Navy is considering potentially renaming some naval vessels that are named after prominent civil rights leaders and Americans, including the late Harvey Milk, the slain gay rights leader. Of course, this potential proposal coming right in the middle of a Pride Month. But we have also learned that other vessels could potentially be up for renaming, including the USNS Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the USNS Harriet Tubman, the USNS Cesar Chavez, among others. So again, nothing has been finalized at this point, but we have seen some documentation that shows that this is a proposal potentially under consideration. We spoke to a couple of congressional leaders here about that, namely Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. We also got a statement from Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, both of whom decried these potential name changes and said, in the case of Leader Jeffries, that this is something that in the past, when the Department of Defense has tried to, in his words, erase history, it has been stopped. So he feels relatively confident that there will be some pushback to this if it were to move forward. The former speaker, for her part as well, also decrying what she claims is an erasure of history, particularly in the case of USNS Harvey Milk. So again, we will continue to monitor reaction as this story is still developing.
Nicole, thank you for that. I want to talk to you both, Weija and Robert, about Elon Musk and the statement today that has everyone somewhat rattled, certainly in the Republican cloakrooms of the House and the Senate. And suddenly Democrats who've been denouncing Elon Musk for months as an oligarch and somebody who should not be believed or trusted are now quoting him back in criticism of the president's economic bill. Weij, what's your read?
Well, it's not exactly a surprise if you watched his interview on CBS Sunday morning, because he said something he just didn't use as colorful language.
He wasn't as specific or colorful.
Yes, but he was criticizing the big, beautiful bill. He told our colleague that it adds to the deficit, something that the White House insists is not true. He said it undermined Doge's work because, Major, this isn't just Elon Musk, Trump's advisor. This is Elon Musk, the person the president tasked with shrinking the federal government and cutting costs. And now he is out here saying, what are you doing, guys? This thing, this disgusting abomination, his words, not mine, is just going to add to the deficit. And he said, I can't take it anymore. I have to post this on X and, tell everyone what I think, which is that obviously he does not agree this is the path forward if you want to shrink the government.
Robert, your sense of the potential political impact of this?
Well, we'll have to see. Do Republicans complain and sound the alarm about the deficit, but do they ultimately vote for the bill?
Sure.
President Trump
the most likely outcome.
Well, that was the outcome in the House.
Right.
And Senator Rand Paul might be able to get away with a no vote. He's been a fiscal hawk ever since he was elected to the Senate in 2010. Maybe they don't need his vote at this point, but even Senator Rand Paul is going to face pressure potentially from President Trump if this bill's on the line. And President Trump is actively threatening primaries against those who oppose him.
Invoking the word betrayal. We'll probably hear it more. Nicole, I want to ask you about Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa. She got a lot of attention last week. I know she has said there's a broader context. You need to listen to the whole conversation. But she did say in question to a constituent about Medicaid cuts, we're all going to die, which, as we've said on this show, fact check true, that is true, we're all going to die. But in this context, it's taken on a political life of its own.
It has, and certainly while the senator is trying to quash this controversy, Democrats are running with the ball, really trying to slam her for those comments. We did have a chance to catch up with the senator as she returned here to Capitol Hill this week following those comments. Take a listen to what she told me.
Do you care to clarify your comments from the town hall last week, Senator?
I'm very compassionate, and you need to listen to the entire conversation.
Can you?
So as you heard there, she says that she is very compassionate, that we need to listen to the entire conversation. She also went on to say, that this is about protecting the vulnerable, which is something that she also said to her constituents during that town hall. I mean, look, if you listen to the entire exchange, what she was trying to explain is that, in terms of some of these Medicaid cuts, it's really about dealing with these issues of waste, fraud, and abuse, which is what congressional Republicans have been arguing in terms of targeting Medicaid. More specifically, she was talking about ensuring that there aren't undocumented immigrants on the rolls, at which point somebody from the audience yelled out, people are going to die. And then she responded saying, well, we're all going to die. But again, while she tries to quash this, Democrats from Hakeem Jeffries to Leader Schumer to Amy Klobuchar, everybody here on Capitol Hill is reacting to it. So much so, we saw a Democrat now challenging her for that U.S. Senate seat, even though Joni Ernst hasn't officially announced her reelection for 2026. A new Democrat got into the race just yesterday. J.D. Scholten, who's a state representative in Iowa, saying he can no longer sit on the sidelines after that town hall comment. So it is something that has now taken on a political life of its own.
Weija, back to you. The White House said today that tomorrow is effectively deadline day on tariffs for our trading partners. What is the expectation at the White House?
Well, that's the current deadline. It just depends.
Thank you for underscoring that.
It just depends on
necessary skepticism injected.
Well,
Thank you.
sure, because we've seen it. Evolve so many times. And the president kind of hinted that he was going to do this about 2 weeks ago. He said, look, we're going to start sending letters to these trading partners, really to let them know that it's time. It's time to come to the bargaining table, or you're going to have to pay. And so I think what we need to remember, Major, is that after Liberation Day, Kevin Hassett, his top economic advisors, the Treasury Secretary, all told us that we have 15 countries lined up. They're on the bubble. That's how close these trade deals are. We are about to get to the other side in the coming days. And that hasn't happened. So I think this is a lot of frustration. The president wants to be able to announce more trade deals. So far, if you're keeping score, there's only been one. And that was with a country where we didn't even have a trade deficit with. And by the way, that's not a formal deal yet.
Robert,
we're still waiting to see the text.
Any danger for the White House in an expectations gap emerging on tariffs and trade?
At this point, he has total control over the Republican Party. So there's no real political risk for Trump. But there is concern inside the White House from some of my sources that Wall Street's always watching everything very carefully. And Trump's watching the market. Indeed,
watching the market and what some traders say about him that is not always charitable thing. Taco. Yeah. Nicole Killian. I have to turn my back ever so briefly. Nicole Killian, thank you so much. Robert Costa, Ouija, great to have you here at the family table. Thank you so much. Secretary of State wears many hats, but not usually this many. The growing resume of Marco Rubio and his role following this weekend's Ukrainian drone attack buried deep inside Russia. That and more here on The Takeout. This is The Takeout. Welcome back. Joining me now, CBS News political contributors Joel Payne and Terry Sullivan. Joel, Chief Communications Officer at Move On. Terry served as Marco Rubio's 2016 presidential campaign manager. You and I remember that quite well.
Seems like just a decade ago.
So, Terry, let me start with you. The Secretary of State has that job. He's also the National Security Advisor, the first in American history since Henry Kissinger to carry out both of those jobs. That's huge. He also has a couple of other jobs, the archivist and one other thing. Oh, that's right, Administrator of AID. Thank you, Arden, for telling me that in my ear. Right. Thank you very much. Evaluate his role, and do you see him becoming a kind of large power broker within the Trump White House and administration?
I mean, he clearly already is. And Marco is unbelievably talented as a politician in a time when I know that's not necessarily a popular thing, but he's very gifted at being self-aware and knowing how to communicate the message and stay in his lane. And if there's one thing that Donald Trump really appreciates, it's people staying in their lane and not wandering off. He has no patience for it. So, look, I think he's going to continue to thrive.
And there's a legend growing up in Washington that he clashed with Elon, did so aggressively, and that impressed Trump.
That's the legend. I have no information beyond that, but I've heard those rumors.
Would that surprise you if that's true? No. That would be consistent with the Marco.
Here's what I know. That if he was going to get in a fight, he'd definitely have a plan to win it. Mm-hmm. So if there was a dust-up, I have no doubt that he did so knowingly.
Republicans sometimes talk to me about what they consider the evolution of Marco Rubio. He was not a fan of Donald Trump in 2016. They clashed over all sorts of things. How would you describe that evolution? Tactical, just going with the flow, or he's actually changed his mind?
Look, I think it's the evolution of the Republican Party. I mean, the Republican Party, I mean, it's been a decade, and the Republican Party is not where it was in 2015 when we were all running. Actually, a large portion of the party was. None of the leaders thought it was and realized it, except for Donald Trump. And so he was ahead of the curve, and I think a lot of the rest of the party is catching up on this, and it's Trump's party. And so, and he's a team player and has always been a team player. I mean, look, this guy started working in politics in his 20s on Bob Dole's campaign in the 90s. Right. So, I mean, he's been around. He gets how to play on the team.
Joel, you've been here before at the table once at America Decides, telling me how wrong-headed Elon Musk was. I'm sure this afternoon you are ready to say Elon Musk is 100% right.
I am ready to say that Elon Musk is making the realization that millions of other Americans are making, is that Donald Trump, you can't take him at his word.
It's like John McCain, Mitt Romney, they love every Republican after they've hated them.
I do think it's interesting, though, that Republicans lauded Elon Musk. What was it? It's, oh my gosh, he's a technologist, and he's fundamentally ahead of the curve, and we gotta get those people, a visionary. But now that he's talking about fundamentally how this bill is going to be a wealth transfer, well, he's not talking about it being a wealth transfer, but it's how it's going to explode the debt and deficit, which essentially is the thing that he was sent to Washington to do, that he put his entire reputation and his business acumen on the line for. And Donald Trump said, I don't care. I'm going to do what I want to do. And don't let the door hit you on the way out. And I think it's interesting that Elon Musk has met that same fate that so many Republicans, and I bet you Marco Rubio might meet that fate one day as well.
Ruben Gallego has been announced. He's going to do some traveling to some early primary and caucus states. He just got elected to the Senate. I sat down with him at the McCain Institute Forum in Sedona, and we had this exchange. I want to play it for you.
I think we have a problem that we look out of touch sometimes. And
out of touch economically, out of touch culturally, I
think of the trifecta, unfortunately. And I think, we need to align, our real base of voters with where we are politically. Because a lot of times we're really trying to answer to the most extreme version of our party versus where your normal Democrat is. Your normal Democrat is someone that believes in safe streets, safe schools, and a secure border.
Joel, normal Democrat. Does he look like someone who could be an emerging force?
He's vying for the normal Democrat lane for the future of the party, maybe 2028. Yeah, sure. Look, I actually think what he's talking about there is this evolving thing that I'm seeing, which is Democrats have lost the economic battle on culture. Right. The policy, I got to be honest with you, and Terry and I could disagree with this. I think the policy remedies that Democrats get behind generally do support working Americans, should be an agenda that people respond well to. We can argue about that. But what we can't argue about is that Democrats have not packaged it and not packaged themselves as the type of political party that culturally connects with folks. And I do think that's what Senator Gallego was talking about. And I think that's a fair point. That's a fair critique of the party.
Terry, packaging?
Yeah, well, look, though.
Do you agree? Or do you think it's more deeper than that?
I think it's deeper, but I do think packaging is a big component to it. Like we
as
agree
a packager yourself.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, look, I do as a professional packager. Look, this is a party that has led with his chin on some really, really dumb causes that nobody in America cared about until they were on the wrong side of, like transgender bathrooms. And so
I got a quarrel with that. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. We do not do the talking about transgender bathrooms lately. Republicans seem obsessed with where you go to the bathroom, who you compete in sports against.
Where I want my kids to go to the bathroom is with
But they are the ones who are obsessed with that. You're not seeing folks like Ruben Gallego. You're not seeing Democrats spend all their time and their political capital talk about that. I mean, we're on the wrong side of the issue politically right now. I get it. But that's a misnomer.
All your time. I'm saying leading with your chin on this. And that's literally my point, which is,
I have to intervene because of the ravages of time and the compression of internet television. It is.
We didn't package it tight enough.
No, we have to work on our package.
Yeah.
Terry Sullivan, Joel Payne, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Almost 5 months after former President Biden left the White House, questions continue to swirl. I bet you've noticed that about his fitness for the presidency, at least in the latter stages. Next, we'll speak with Franklin Foer, who wrote an account of Biden's first 2 years in office. That's next here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout, back to the Conversation Corner, which I will tell you I love to hang out in. I absolutely love it. During his time in office, President Biden led, as you might recall, the nation through a pandemic and navigated major international conflicts. Very much tried to, including the war in Ukraine and the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, all during his first 2 years. And they were chronicled in this book, which I am told I am not to touch. We just have to leave it right there. I got very strict instructions. Don't touch the book. The title, as you can see, The Last Politician. The author, Franklin Foer, who joins me now. It's great to have you with us.
So good to be here.
So, during your reporting for this book, which is about the first 2 years, did you encounter anyone who was at all, even slightly, anxious about the re-election and the prospects of a re-elected Biden serving out the full four years of a second term.
Yeah, people were anxious about re-election. I don't think serving out the full 4 years of his term. I never saw any evidence of that. I saw, examples of a guy who was very, very old, and that was apparent, I think, to anybody who encountered him and everybody who saw him from afar. And during the first 2 years, I saw both strengths and weaknesses that grew out of that age. I mean, it's a matter of strength. I think he had this deep knowledge of the Senate that helped him pass a lot of legislation. It allowed him to do some bold things at the outset on foreign policy that flew in the face of conventional wisdom. But then I think there was this inability to communicate in public that was, I think, clear. I think we in the press saw that most evidently, which was that we didn't have the same sort of access to him that other presidents gave access to.
Was that accumulated fatigue, do you think? He just got tired? I mean, genuinely tired?
Yeah. He just didn't have the stamina to go out and stump in the way that I think you'd want the leader of your party to go out and stump.
Which we both know is an essential part of the job.
Yeah.
Essential part of the job. I want to talk to you about some fascinating reporting in the book about Afghanistan.
Yeah.
About Afghanistan, the withdrawal, the warnings that were given by many people close to this administration about what might happen if you don't prepare better. And one of those voices you report in great detail is Hillary Clinton. Walk me through that.
So Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, and even going back further to when she was First Lady, had connections to women in Afghanistan, and she stayed in touch with them. And as Biden made this decision to withdraw, she became this clearinghouse for all sorts of warnings from NGOs and from women in Afghanistan, saying that disaster was about to unfold. And she tried to convey those warnings to the administration.
If you botch the withdrawal, these women will suffer.
Yeah.
Well, was that a warning to them?
Not even if you botch the withdrawal, that if you withdraw, the Afghan army and Afghan state are going to collapse, and all these people who were our allies for a very long time will be in danger.
So Hillary Clinton's not James Comer, not some right-winger that the Biden White House would reflexively repel or ignore or put at arm's length. This is Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
But she almost got the same kind of Heisman treatment, right?
Yeah, for some people who she'd been close to for a very long period of time. So in the run-up, she got a lot of that. And what's interesting to me about this as a kind of a window into Joe Biden, it's that he was very stubborn about everything. He was stubborn about withdrawing from Afghanistan and stubborn about the way that would happen, as he was stubborn about his decision to run for re-election again. And so that can be both a strength and a weakness. The strength is that when you're right, it allows you to push past a lot of conventional wisdom, a lot of people who are naysayers. You can do hard things. But when you're wrong, you just look like an idiot because you're going past all of these people who are predicting all the things that you need to be concerned with. And that was true in Afghanistan, and I think it was true with his re-election.
Franklin, there was a time about that 2-year point when Biden White House officials, feeling very good about themselves, would say casually, this record is comparable to Lyndon Baines Johnson and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He's right up there on the Mount Rushmore of Democratic presidents, 20th and 21st century. Do you think that will hold? Do you think that was ever true? And if it was true, do you think it'll hold now, knowing what the country knows and looking back on the 2024 election and his decision to run?
He framed things very clearly, almost more clearly than any president. He said, I'm about saving democracy in the face of authoritarianism. And that didn't just mean staving off Russia and China. It meant that in his mind, he was trying to prevent Donald Trump from returning to the White House. And so whatever he accomplished in his first 2 years may have looked significant at the time. When I wrote this book, it looked much more impressive after 2 years. But Donald Trump's return to the White House means that almost everything that he accomplished is going to be undone. So it's hard to give him too much credit. The decision to run again clouds everything else in his presidency.
There might be one LBJ comparison, LBJ to Richard Nixon, Joe Biden to Donald Trump, Franklin IV, the last politician. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
That is it for today. Tune in tomorrow for my conversation with California Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna. And if you like Terry Sullivan on Tonight Show, he's back tomorrow for more on his journey outside of Washington. I mean, way outside of Washington, to the summit of Mount Everest. Stick around. The Daily Report coming up next right here on CBS News 24/7.